I was thinking today about the first time that I came to Lynchburg, and that was 8 years ago, and I came here with a very specific purpose in mind. I was getting ready to graduate school, and I came here to get loans to start a business. I'd never done that before. Had no idea how to even get a loan. You know, I was just a kid in school. So I drove from Kansas City to here, got here to Lynchburg, and I had 8 banks lined up that day. And it was such a memorable, I can still remember exactly what I was wearing that day. The black suit and the red power tie, right? People told me you got to wear a red power tie, Will, because that's going to show that you really know what's going on. So I went in there with my business plans and not realizing really what that looked like, but I went in there with $125,000 in student loan debt right off the bat, just for school. No job, no collateral. And I estimated that I needed about another $190,000 to open a business. Knowing what I know now, that was stupid to walk into a bank with those types of ambitions, right? At the time, I just thought, well, I'm a good guy. Yeah, they'll recognize that and want to give me money. So I went to 7 banks, and they all told me it doesn't matter that you're a good guy or that you have a good business plan. It's too risky. And so the last bank that I went to, they sat down, they talked to me for a good while, and the owner of the bank came out and said, Will, we're going to take a risk on you. It doesn't make good business sense, but we're going to go ahead and take a risk on you, and I'm going to give you the money that you need to get your business started. And I will never forget the feeling of gratitude at that moment, because if they said no, it meant that I was going to have to go probably work for another chiropractor for 5 years or so and try and save up some kind of money to get a loan. So basically, they just completely opened up my future for me. And I'll never forget that feeling of gratitude that I had towards them. And I still, 8 years later, have that same feeling of gratitude towards them. And not only is it a feeling, but it affects the way that I treat them and the way that I act towards them. It's way more than a feeling, like the old Journey songs, more than a feeling. And the way that I treat them is this. Not only have I never missed a payment on, and I will not miss a payment on any of their loans, but I've given them, I go above and beyond to always try and give them, they have my home loan, they have all my car loans, they have my business loans, they have my personal loans. I will never do business with another bank unless I move away or they go out of business, because I still feel that gratitude towards them. And it not only affects the way I feel about them, but the way I act towards them. So what I want you guys to think about right now is, who is it in your life? Think of somebody or something. Maybe it's an institution. Maybe it's a previous employer who gave you a shot when you really didn't deserve it. Who is it in your life that you feel extreme gratitude towards? Just kind of get a picture of that in your mind. And what I would ask you is, how do you feel about them? You know, you've got that feeling of gratitude, but it goes beyond that. We all recognize that. It goes beyond that. How do you act towards them? How do you act differently towards them than you do towards other people or towards other groups or other institutions? How does it affect your behavior, that feeling of gratitude that you have towards them? Because what we're going to talk about tonight is this idea of gratitude towards God. I think about the amount of gratitude that I feel for somebody for giving me a business loan so that I could start a business, and try and in some way put that on a scale with what God has done for me. And it doesn't even measure up. So how do we respond to God? What is the and that's what this whole series is about that we're in right now, worship. What is the appropriate response to God for the gratitude for what He has done for us? So I just want to kind of take you through how my mind works on this. And the first thing is, I think initially you just got to get your head screwed on right. Your head and your heart. You got to get your head screwed on right. Woody said something interesting yesterday. He said, our response to God, our gratitude response to God, will be directly proportional to our understanding of what He's done for us. Now, that's a mouthful. I understand that. So let me just try and say it differently. It'll probably sound exactly the same, but the way that we respond in gratitude to God is going to equal how we understand what He has done for us. So that's important, this understanding of what has God done for us. That's where it starts. It starts up here in our heads with this understanding of what God has done for us. And the first thing I would say is what it isn't. It's not about your stuff. It's not about your perceived excess of or your perceived deficiency of stuff. As a matter of fact, a lot of times that's what gets in the way of our gratitude. because those are the things that we perceive. We base our relationship with God on our stuff. I had a conversation with Dave today, and he said one of the biggest things that really changed his heart towards with gratitude towards God was when he recognized it was not about the things that weren't going well in his life or the things that he perceived that he didn't have. It was when he let go of that and just expressed his gratitude for God, for who he is and what he has done for us. And that's really what gratitude towards God is. It's who he is, what characteristics do we know to be true of God, and what has he done for us. So the first thing is get your head screwed on straight there. Another thing I would say about that is it's easy to forget. You know, one thing I would say is be very, very careful, be very, very diligent not to let the world or just time erase your memory of why you feel gratitude towards God. Because sometimes we can get so tangled up in the world that we forget that, and we lose our heart of gratitude is really what happens. Another thing I would say about that is don't lose your heart of humility. So critical. I think about the times in my life whenever I've lost my heart of gratitude towards God, and almost always it's preceded by me losing my humility. And what that does is, as soon as I lose my humility, the things that God has done for me in the past in some sort of sick, twisted way, as I lose my humility, I start to take credit for that. I start to look back over the things that God's done in my life, and I said, well, I did this. And it becomes less about God and more about me. And when you're in that state, you're also way more inclined to take the reins from God in the future, right? When you don't have a humble heart, that's when you start trying to take the reins from God and directing your own future. So all those fall under the category of get your head screwed on right. Now once you have that done, and you have a correct understanding of what God has done for you, then I think we can move into the arena of what is the appropriate response. And the first thing I would say is the appropriate response is to tell God what you're grateful for from him and to spend time with him. What's one of the primary ways that we can tell when people feel gratitude towards us? They tell us, right? They tell us. They tell us that they feel gratitude for us. And what I forget sometimes is, not only does God deserve this, like in my mind that makes sense. God deserves me to show gratitude for what he's done. But what I forget, and what I really struggle with sometimes, is God desires that. God desires me to spend time with him. I sit down and I pray, and my mind wanders, and after a while I'm just like, God, I'm an airhead. Why in the world would you want to hang out with me? You know? But then I also think, but you wouldn't send your son to earth to die for me, to spend eternity with me, if you didn't desire to spend time with me. So God deserves it, but also God desires it. Another important thing I think whenever we go to God and we talk to God and we show him our gratitude is, God is not a genie in a bottle, right? When we sit down and we evaluate the time that we spend with God, really sit down and evaluate how much time are we just sitting in awe of God, giving thanks to God, and expressing to God who he is to us. And how much time are we spending sitting there rubbing the bottle, making 3 wishes. God, this is what I want. God, this is what I want. God, this is what I want. This is what I need. How much time of that time that you're spending with God is spent in gratitude? Now, when you get that down, when you can go to God with a humble heart, with your head screwed on right, and go to him with gratitude, it opens up another way to express gratitude towards God. And that is to learn what God desires for your life and to implement it immediately. Right? To learn what God desires for your life and implement that immediately. You learn that when you start to spend time with him, when you start to spend time with his people. I tried to think of a good analogy of the way I could explain this today, and this is the best I got, guys, but my wife and I have 2 dogs. One of my dogs desires to please me.